discuss. Foreign ministers from 28 countries, along with the EU Commissioner for Equality, Preparedness and Crisis Management, have issued a joint statement calling for an immediate end to the war in Gaza. The signatories, including nations such as Australia, Canada, France, Japan and the United Kingdom, said the suffering of civilians in Gaza has reached new depths. They condemned Israel's aid delivery model, describing it as dangerous and dehumanizing, and criticized the killing of over 800 Palestinians while seeking basic necessities like food and water. The statement accused the Israeli government of denying essential humanitarian assistance and called on it to fulfill its obligations under international humanitarian law. It also condemned the continued detention of hostages by Hamas since the October the 7th attack in 2023, calling for their immediate and unconditional release. The leaders said a negotiated ceasefire is the best chance to bring them home. The signatories urged Israel to lift all restrictions on the flow of aid and to allow the UN and humanitarian organizations to carry out life-saving work safely and effectively. They also rejected any proposals to forcibly displace Palestinians into so-called humanitarian cities, warning that permanent forced displacement violates international law. We are once again joined by Dr. Navon to discuss this further. Dr. Navon, this statement comes from 28 different foreign ministers from around the world, mainly European countries, of course, but many of them former allies of Israel, still allies in some ways. However, does Israel risk alienating itself from the international community, from this community that it has built a relationship with over the years? What are your views on the mounting pressure on the Israeli government from its allies?
First of all, there's no such a thing as an international community. This expression is an oxymoron. There are 193 members of the UN. They do not constitute a community. You have different countries with different interests. Most of the countries you mentioned do belong to the free world, and the free world is indeed Israel's main ally in the struggle that we are fighting against Iran and its proxies. Now, Israel wants the war to end. It's not that we need to be asked to end the war, but the war will end the moment Hamas releases our hostages and lays down its arms. We are not fighting in Gaza out of boredom or pleasure. We're fighting in order to release our hostages and in order to make sure that Hamas never constitutes a threat again to Israel. And we shall achieve those goals. We appreciate the concern of our allies, some of which you mentioned, for the humanitarian situation in Gaza. In fact, Israel is supplying aid to the Gazan population. It is supplying humanitarian aid. And if it was supplied via Hamas, that would enable Hamas to again get an income and reinforce itself. The aid has to be supplied directly to the civilian population and not via Hamas, and this is exactly what Israel has been trying to do. So we appreciate the concern of our allies, but again, the message is very clear, and I'll repeat it again. The war will end the moment Hamas releases our hostages and lays down its arms. Before that, we will continue to fight.
Dr. Navon, one of the main focuses of this statement, of course, was the mass civilian deaths. However, the humanitarian access, which you have mentioned, there has also been a reported 800 Palestinians reportedly killed while seeking food and water, some severely criticizing the Israeli and United States-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. On what legal basis do you justify limiting and controlling humanitarian access in a conflict zone where international law mandates unimpeded relief?
International law mandates the army fighting in the territory to allow and enable the supply of humanitarian aid, which is exactly what Israel has been doing for the past 20 months of this conflict. However, in recent months, Israel has changed the mechanism so that the aid is not controlled by Hamas. As long as Hamas takes control of the aid, it makes money, it reinforces itself, And you cannot provide that aid and fight Hamas at the same time if that aid is controlled by Hamas. So Israel is in fact abiding by international law by not only allowing the supply of humanitarian aid, but supplying it itself. But this has to be supplied directly to the population and not via Hamas. As for the victims you mentioned, the so-called information comes from Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. And of course, it's not a reliable source of information.
Dr. Navon, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Pleasure for having you. We now move on to another related development from